Welcome to another episode of Soul Guided with Sookton. I am your host, Suki Eleuterio, and this is the podcast where we talk about all of the things that are near and dear to the enlightenment of your soul. I am so excited to have the Pythian Priestess here today, Ashley, as my guest. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Suki. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So, I we connected with each other over social media, and our vibes are very much the same. We both have connections with being an empath and healer and connecting with the spiritual side of ourself and our lives. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself to my audience and just tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Absolutely. So, my mundane name is Ashley Ryan. I am an initiated Hermetic priestess. I was initiated and given the title of priestess by the Divine Mother Isis, or the Egyptian name Aset. And I I have been so blessed to walk this path of reintegrating the spiritual and esoteric occult knowledge back into the world that is inundated with capitalism and self centeredness and trying to bring our awareness back to the divine.
I love that. I connect with the goddesses as well. I've been doing a lot of goddess work. That is beautiful. And the priestess work as well. I did some priestess lineage work. But what I would love to chat with you a little bit deeper about, and I think this is such a perfect time with all of the chaoticness that's going on in the world right now. How do we as women, and especially sometimes women of power, right, where we have this creative power and energy about us, how do we protect ourselves and protect our energy so that we're harnessing the right kind of energy? And I'd love to know kind of what you've learned along the way and maybe what you teach others about that.
So the first thing is recognizing that you are in control of where your awareness goes. Where awareness goes, energy flows. And sometimes we have energy leaks. And the biggest energy leaks you get is for your cell phone. So if you are doom scrolling, if you've got 8 to 12 hours screen time a day, let's try to cut that down because you are taking in so much of other people's energy, of propaganda, lies, and misinformation that it's scattering your attention. So that's step one. Step two is setting firm boundaries. What am I willing to take in and what is not for me? And sometimes that means that we have to put boundaries up with people we love, people who maybe want to talk about the bad things that are happening in the world. And there's a time and place for that, but you can't be doing it 24/7. It will destroy you. So, what I do is I take 30 minutes out of every day. That's when I read the news. That's when I get my information. I have my freak out for 30 minutes, and then I go back into what can I control? Because ultimately, that's all we can do is focus on what we can control. One tip my therapist taught me when it comes to that is finding something you can control. So I clean. My house has never been cleaner since post COVID because that's something that I can control that keeps my energy at bay so I'm not so scattered.
I absolutely love this, and you're saying what you're saying is spot on because a lot of the times I think of myself of just being in this little bubble, but that's like the bubble that I need to be in order to just sometimes just like survive. And as somebody that's highly sensitive, picking up on other people's energies, it's the same even when I go out, when I'm in big crowds. I can handle it, but only to some extent. And then sometimes it's overstimulation. It's interesting because right now we're speaking to each other under the cover of this full moon energy. We also have Mercury retrograde coming up. What do you say to people when it's like energetics of maybe even just the universe, right? Like the full moon energy, or the shifting of the tides, or frequencies going up and down. How can we protect ourselves from that as well?
So I think one thing is realizing that it's not a punishment. I think a lot of people online see Mercury retrograde as a kind of punishment when in fact The movement of the planets is natural alchemy. So some people, like myself and you, we quicken our self-development through prayer, meditation, rituals. But the vast majority of the world doesn't do that. So it's not a punishment, it's a development. And the most important thing is to slow down. We live in a world that is hyper speed and it's not getting any slower. And our minds were developed over millions of years. Our ancestors lived a very different life than we do, and we still share that same brain chemistry and brain neural pathways that they did. Getting overstimulated is very normal, especially when we're going through massive changes with Neptune and Uranus going into Gemini, and we're seeing an upheaval of society. You've got to slow down. If you get caught up in the rat race, you get caught up in the hysteria, you're only hurting yourself. And that's something that I think a lot of us have been conditioned to, is like follow the path, follow the herd, go with the population flow, and that will hurt you. You've got to stand on your own. You've got to be able to create that resistance within yourself to not fall into that. So take a step back. Breathing exercises are great. They're so simple. The favorite one that I teach my students is called the four-fold breath, which is you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold again. And you create this square. And what this does, within 16 breaths, resets your central nervous system. There's no pill, there's nothing else that can do that for you except your own awareness.
Oh, I love the breath work. Breath work is so powerful and really can help like ground you and center you. There's another breathing exercise that I learned many, many moons ago. It's called bee breathing. You put your fingers into your ears and you do a little humming. So every time you inhale, you inhale. When you exhale, you kind of like hum or buzz. And a yoga teacher once said to me, when you do that breathing, you cannot think anxious thoughts because when you're breathing that way and you're buzzing, the vibration disrupts the anxious thoughts or wherever the monkey mind wants to take us to all these places. So breathing is so powerful. I love that tip. And I love the tip of sometimes we want to judge things as like good or bad. We even do this with our feelings, right? Like, oh, this is a good feeling and that's a bad feeling, and I'm not allowed to feel that feeling. When in general, the feelings are like a powerful place for us to be and to release those feelings out into the world so that we can rise. One of the things that came up to me when you were saying all of this as well is I've been playing with this the word soft for probably about several years now. And I recognize that the softness and the sensitivity, I work with a lot of projectors. I work with a lot of empaths. I work with a lot of introverts. There's like this, and neurodivergent we were talking about earlier. A lot of this softness, right, that over years has been seen as weakness. Even women, ourselves, were seen or known as the weaker sex, right? Which is hilarious because we're the ones who are actually birthing the people into the world. But I would love to know like your own journey with how you got here, how you got to like develop the gifts that you have and kind of recenter them as a power place for you.
Of course, I'd love to talk about that. So, the first thing is that your intuition is soft. It comes from the unconscious mind. Intuition is the merging of wisdom and intelligence. And you can't do that if you're in your yang all the time. If you're in this hard masculine, meaning projective energy, you're not going to be able to receive. And that's what I see as soft, is the yin, the feminine, the receptive energy. So to be balanced, I must receive and also project. That is what the High Priestess card shows us with the black and the white pillars, the yin and the yang of life. Society wants you always to be projecting. What are you creating? What's your productivity? Rest is something that I really had to learn that I didn't need to earn. And that comes from a long line within my family of people who overwork themselves. You have to recognize where those limiting beliefs are and where they came from. So for me, father's a workaholic. Society says you are a woman, you have to work extra hard to get anywhere in the world. And so I did. For many years, I overworked myself, I underslept. And that was actually at a disadvantage to myself, where I felt like, oh, I'm getting ahead, I'm getting this done, but I'm actually destroying my inner life. I'm destroying the ability that was given to me through the healing of being a woman. Like you were talking about like good and bad energy. First of all, you're right. That's just a label we gave to ourselves. And for me in particular, anger was a huge thing I had to learn to accept, because as a child, as a woman, especially born in the South, you don't show anger. Anger is base or low. That's absolutely incorrect. I went through over a year of hypnotherapy to restructure my mind to understand, hey, anger shows up when my boundaries are being violated. Anger shows up when I'm uncomfortable or I feel like I'm being hurt or attacked. So, anger is not a bad thing. It's there to protect you. And learning how to feel the emotion, and this is something my therapist taught me, your emotions should last 8 to 12 minutes. That's it. A little less than a quarter of an hour, and then release it. Let it go. And I found that was so helpful. Instead of being like, I shouldn't be mad, let me push this away, let me do that. And what I was doing, I was creating energetic harm. In fact, trigger warning to everyone, when I would do this, I created an unhealthy energetic, kind of like a valve in my wrists, where when I would choose to push my anger away, it would turn into sadness, and it would feel like I could feel the energy leaking from my palms and my wrists. And it was depleting me. It was draining me. So what? I could make other people comfortable? No. Anger is a natural reaction. Americans are incredibly afraid of anger. But ironically, we're seeing, because of that, the extremism that we have here. And that's not helpful. So what I recommend for people that I've learned on my journey is when you feel an emotion, you don't have to always act on it. That's why you have your imagination. So maybe you can't go up to your boss and say all the evil, mean things you want to say, right? But you can in your mind, and your mind doesn't know the difference. So giving yourself the permission to release that anger through your imagination is key.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. And so powerful what you're saying, because as women, I think particularly, we're always told, speak quieter, be softer, don't stand out, don't get angry, don't, and so we contain it, and this containment, becomes like a shaken soda can. It's only going to take so much before that's going to come out. So similarly to you, I had the same overworking mindset and mentality, especially as a woman. Yes, I have to doubly prove myself, because a man's going to walk in and be able to do my job in a second, and they're just going to take it. So I have to work doubly hard and speak extra loud and not be angry and not be, so then it creates this restriction of the feminine side, where we like cut it off and put it to the side and say, well, that's just something that I'll put over here, to the point where I felt for the longest time that my spirituality and my creativity was something that was over here. I could go and get it at this point or that point of the day, or this point or that point of the week, but it's not something I can do all the time. And over the years, I had to completely unlearn so many things about myself, and realize that the femininity and the connection with my womb space and my sacral chakra, all of the healing had to do with endometriosis and PCOS. all of these ailments that I was having in this particular part of my body because I had shut it off and said, that just lives over here. But just like you're sharing about the intuitiveness being wisdom and intelligence, it's also about connecting these different parts of our body and allowing the energy to flow, up and down. But I love it too because I love that your connection is with Isis. I, for the longest time, had a big fear of Egyptian goddesses, Egyptian gods and goddesses in general. I did a hypnotherapy many years ago, actually, with one of my favorites. His name is Dr. Brian Weiss. And I did a past life regression with him, and I was able to go back in time. And I found out that I didn't have the most pleasant of past lives in Egypt. There are a lot of people that don't have pleasant past lives with Egypt. But over the years, as I've been really getting to know the goddess, it's the same as what we've just been talking about, where there are more darker goddesses and there are more lighter goddesses, but that doesn't mean that one is good or one is bad. And actually, they're both moving you on the same spectrum of wherever you're going. And when you start to connect with goddess energy in general, you coming back to your dark feminine or your light feminine, you're coming back to that. But I'd love for you to speak a little bit on Isis, and if there's any messages that you receive that you would like the world to know about from the goddess.
Yes, of course. Dion Fortune said, all goddesses are but one. And so our mindset, we want to be able to put things into boxes. That's our human nature. And Isis is all. So in the book that I use to guide rituals, it's called Isis Magic, written by Priestess Isadora Forrest, which comes from the Golden Dawn, tradition. It's taught me that Isis is all. All is Isis. Isis is all. And when you read her mythology, sometimes Isis did some shady stuff. And that's a representation of creating wholeness. And that's ultimately what spirituality is about. We see this in psychology as well, with Carl Jung is creating an integration of the dark and the light. Now, to do that, that means we need to be able to go into the dark and look at ourselves. When I first started meditation many, many years ago, about 15 years ago, I had a very hard time with it because I'd meditate and I would find this bubbling, seething anger, and I was afraid of it. I was like, oh my God, I am a horrible human being. Like, why is that sitting there? But it wasn't until I was able to take the light, which doesn't always mean perfection either. Light is just illumination and understanding, and saying, okay, I'm going to go into this part of myself that's been abused, that's been hurt, that's been shut down, and give it love. That is when you start the integration process. And this process is not just done through journaling. I think journaling is super duper helpful. I think it's great. But truly the work is done internally, where you can go inside of yourself and look at those fragmented parts. And sometimes you need to do rituals to bring them out. One I will give to your audience right now. It's very simple. All you need is a tea light and a mirror. So you will go into, a lot of people do this in their bathroom because that's the biggest mirror they have. Light some incense, cleanse the space, and take the tea light and hold it as you light it right underneath your chin. Don't burn yourself, give yourself a little space, and look in the mirror. And I want you to look directly into your eyes and ask for your inner child or inner teen to reveal themselves to you. And you will see your face change. You will see yourself morph. It's actually pretty intense. And when you get to that place, ask your inner child or inner teen, what's wrong? What do you need? Where is the pain and how can I help you heal it? The best answers are going to come from yourself, not from me, not from another reader, but your internal world. And when you can start doing that and start trusting yourself, the journey of wholeness becomes much easier.
It's so true about us learning to trust ourselves, that the answers are right there. And the inner child has so much wisdom to share with us, like so much to say when you're sharing about the illuminating and coming into these darker, shadowy parts of ourselves and the shadow work that you can do. This is the powerful stuff that shifts the energy and moves all the gunk right in the system. So you can have that clarity because we are the manifestors, right? We are the magnet, the magnetic point. And I always say it's like a window, and if the window is dirty and foggy and you can't see any light coming through, then you've got to do the work. And that work has either got to be with people like you and I who can guide you on that work. I love that you said therapist. I think a lot of people don't talk enough about therapy and the importance of, talking through. I mean, we live in a traumatic society, like everyone on TikTok talking about their trauma like it's not even a thing. I'm like, let's not make light of this. Like, this is deep stuff. And so I think there are multiple avenues of healing that you should always take a look into to get you to where you want to be, to clean that window into the self. But thank you so much for this. This has been an amazing, enlightening conversation. I feel like you and I are kindred souls for sure. So maybe we have to do some more things together. We will have to wait and see. But any last, like, final thoughts that you'd like before we wrap?
Yes, I have a significant amount of clientele who tell me that therapy doesn't work for them. And I say, okay, have you ever tried hypnotherapy? Hypnotherapy is a little fringy, but it's becoming more prominent now. And what it does is it allows you to bypass the conscious mind to work directly with the unconscious. So if CBT or talk therapy isn't working for you, I urge you to find a reputable hypnotherapist, because therapy is necessary. Because you're right, Suki, we live in a very terrible, traumatic world. The other thing I would suggest for all your listeners is reading a book called The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate. And that will help you have a better understanding about how illness, such as anger, if we suppress it, creates difficulties in our bodies. So the more you know, the better you can live.
This is the third time somebody has brought up Gabor Mate to me. I think even the third time on this podcast, which is hilarious because I've seen only a little bit of his stuff online. I haven't actually sat to read the book. So that was just, and as you said it, I was laughing because I looked outside and this yellow butterfly flew by right as you said it. And I said, oh, wow, I think I need to read that book. So thank you so much for that tip. How can my audience reach you, get in touch with you, and follow you?
Amazing. That's what an amazing synchronicity you just experienced. So for everyone listening, you can find me across social media on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram as Pythian Priestess. That's Pythian Priestess. And if you're interested in learning from me, you can find pythianmysteryschool.com, and I would love to help you find your path in spirituality.
Thank you so much again. Until next time, you have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye bye.